Hi, my name is Andy Smith. I teach at the University of Texas at El Paso, where I teach all forms of percussion. Welcome to my tutorial on the Timpani Etude for the Texas All-State Etudes for 2020 and 2021. The Etude is number 15 from Vic Firth's Solo Timpanist. If you go to the TMEA website, there are some great notes there on the etudes, and on the Timpani Etude, they're really on point. Presumably, those were written by the selector, Blake Wilkins. One of the things that Professor Wilkins mentions is that there's some glissandi. It's a low G to a C on your low drum. It's a 3-drum etude, so I'm using the 32, the 29, and the 26. We have Adam's Professional Timpani here, and the top note is a B natural typically, so I was able to easily just tune it up a half step to get that C. So that's a nice option. Another possible option, depending on circumstances, could be to use another 29. Now we have to think in terms of touch and tuning, and also sticks. There's a good density of rhythm and tempo with this etude. So I'm using Innovative Percussion's new Javon Gilliam series mallet. Javon Gilliam plays with the National Symphony, incredible musician, and he came up with some clever names for some of these. This is the number 5, and it's called the Catch 22. It's got a wood core with black German felt with the hard side turned to the outside. So there's still some nice warmth along with the articulation. In terms of use of a stool, you can execute this etude, the tuning and glissandi standing if you choose. I prefer a stool primarily because it puts me at an optimal height to play the instrument with the sides of the mallets, whereas for me, standing, I might be playing with the top edge a little bit or have to adjust my body. That's my primary reason. It also does provide an ease of tuning and also a consistency in terms of where your body is positioned in relation to the instrument. That's a real help. Now with etude number 15, meter is a primary concern. It's mostly in 7/8. Now the good news is everything is groups of 2 and 3. So the typical phrasing is 2 plus 2 plus 3 for your 7/8 measure. You can think of at least all the way through measure 18 with that sense of metering. Some measures and phrases put the 3 in the middle of the bar. However, there are some cases where you would want to think not necessarily per the bar line or the meter, but in terms of the phrasing. So, for example, measure 20 through 22. I've just ticked off, almost like with a pencil, I've marked stems, like stems of quarter notes through there. And I haven't even counted how many there are, but it's this music. Obviously, that feels like it's to a quarter note pulse. So I play much of that line with a quarter note pulse, with the exception toward the end of that phrase. Most of the time during the bar or two of rest, when you're retuning, it's helpful to stick with that 1-2, 1-2, 1-2, 3 metering. You could also think of some kind of melodic content that helps you reset the pitches, but in rhythm, or even a rhythmic motif. Other places where you'd want to think in a different meter, measure 26 through 27, the A to the F sharp. It's just a quarter note phrasing, so to me it doesn't make sense to be counting groups of 3 and forcing it into 7/8. 2 bars of 7/8 is a bar of 7/4. So measure 26 and 27, and really 28 with some upbeat content you can think of like in 7/4. At measure 39 to 41, now you have in the key of B flat with the Fs on the outside. That's one of my favorite parts of the piece. Just has a cool feel, and it's really a group of 5, like a measure of 5/8 and another measure of 5/8, the same motif twice, and then kind of a distortion on that motif, but it's in 3/4, and then the 5 again. Maybe if I play quietly, I could count over that, what I mean by that. Let's see, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, and 2, and 3, and 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. And that brings us actually to that spot, to crossovers. There are a few crossovers in the piece, and depending on the sticking that you choose will determine, give or take, that next downbeat at 42 is a place where I've added a cross. It's written as a left, which is a little bit of a workout for the left hand, and that's fine, but it's smoother for me starting the phrase with a cross. And in general, with a crossover, I prefer to start with the cross and end open. So for example, the single 4s at 31 and 32, I play it with the left hand crossing over the right, beginning crossed and ending open. In terms of dampening, dampen, but not too much, primarily for use of clarity as opposed to duration. You can dampen for duration in a couple of spots. I did so in measure 4, for example. But primarily for cadential points for clarity, and often at those cadential points, and then they're followed by the rests where you're retuning. That can be a good spot to dampen for duration as well. But some of the rests that you see, 8th note rests and such, I think are sometimes there to give clarity to rhythmic placement, and not necessarily that you want to dampen every time that there's a rest. Use that philosophy in general with timpani, dampen, but not too much. So embrace the pitch content. Actually, in terms of pitch content, you'll need to do a 3-note scale on the 26. I recommend practicing those kind of scales on each drum anyway as a fundamental skill. You'll need to get used to the instrument. I do make use of the gauges, given some of the quick tuning, such as playing glissandi, where the E down to the C, back to the D. Now, ideally, the more familiarity you can have with the drums that you're going to play on, that's optimal. If you can get some time on them, or at least get some information on the type of drums, any warm-up that you have, you'd want to prioritize checking the gauges if you're going to use them and if they're there, and also just familiarity with the pedals and where the pitches sit on that particular set of drums. Relative pitch and training that skill, of course, is critical, and also as you prepare the tune, just become familiar with the pitch content. Beyond intervals, I also like to think in terms of harmony and what chord is being formed or what's my key of the moment. So embrace the pitch content, have some fun, and embrace the rhythmic content and the feel of this piece. It's really a lot of fun to get around the drums, and good luck.